Checking back in again with State Representative Tacky Chan of Quincy for our weekly Tacky Talks. Hey, Tacky, how you doing?
Good morning, Joe. Good to see you again this week.
Appreciate the opportunity, as always, to bring folks up to date on what's happening in Tacky Land. How was your Lunar New Year festival celebration?
That was very quiet. Like I said last week, we just did a virtual thing on Zoom, and then didn't really do much on New Year's Day itself. We made some phone calls to wish people Happy New Year, but for the most part, we just stayed home, and that was pretty much it. Very quiet week. The 20th of this month, the noon time of Queen's Resources will have its virtual New Year. I've done my New Year's recording for the show, as well as many other electeds and sponsors of the event. So please tune in if you want to see me for my 2 minutes of hellos.
Yeah, we'll have it here on QATV, plus, as you mentioned, Quarry's website and all their social media, too. It starts at noon on the 20th to celebrate the Year of the Tiger.
Yep, Year of the Water Tiger. If you follow the total zodiac, you have the 5 elements. So in the Chinese zodiac world, you have air. No, there's no air, actually. It's actually kind of interesting. It's water, fire, earth, wood, and metal are the 5 Chinese elements.
I never knew that. That's the first I've ever heard of that.
Yeah, most people perceive the basic 4 elements, in Western cultures is, air, water, fire, and earth, or soil, ground, whatever. And air is part of it, but for Chinese element calculation, they don't actually consider air an element. It's actually interesting because they're all somewhat tangible. So considering wood as a separate element and the metal as a separate element, because it's distinct and different from the other 3.
Interesting. Okay. So the water tiger. Okay. And tigers hate water.
Tigers do swim. I mean, they do play in the water. They just don't live there.
Right.
But no, it's another element to the 12 zodiac symbols. Each one gets an element on the cycle. Don't ask me how the calculation is done. I have no idea. I just know that on top of an element of the animal, you actually have element of the what do you call it? Alchemy-ish type science element. And then you have on top of that, if you get really into it, you can actually do phases of the moon of the time of birth, which actually is very common to Greek-based horoscopes too, which actually does do a time calculation. It's just part of trying to discern someone's personality and fortunes. So that's not unusual. Except we don't use a solar calendar, we use lunar calendar.
Mm-hmm.
And there's an additional thing to that. So you're really, really deep into this. What do you call it? I had it at the tip of my tongue. Horoscopes.
Mm-hmm.
If you're deep into horoscope, and fortune telling ish type stuff, there's plenty of websites out there you can look up. Some are slightly different. They can get you into the minute details. If you're into that sort of thing, it can be a lot of fun.
What year were you born in, Tacky?
I was born in the year of the ox. So last year was the year of the ox, and I'm glad the year of ox is now passed on to the year of the tiger.
Yes. I think a lot of folks are happy no matter what it is that it's moving on.
And one of the telling things about year-based zodiac symbols is that you can kind of discern somebody's age because the zodiac symbol comes around every 12 years.
Oh, okay.
So you can kind of guess your way to somebody's age pretty easily.
So you're 36. Very good.
Exactly. And I'll be trapped there for a long time.
That's right. Hey, were you at the State House during the protests yesterday?
I was not. I got a staff meeting during that time. I was receiving text messages during the staff meeting. Actually, no, there's 2 things going on. It was actually bled over. So I was actually at the Beaches Commission meeting yesterday. So Metropolitan Beaches Commission's virtual meeting was yesterday, taking testimony regarding linguistic access on signage and beaches. And then I had a staff meeting immediately after the beaches meeting. So I was getting text messages from people inside the State House updating what was going on through today. And the State House News Service counted 9 total people. And the issue isn't the protesting of the State House or vaccines or COVID. That's not the issue here. It's a breach of security issue. And that is the larger concern that 9 individuals could rush through the Ashburton security with the Metropolitan Police there, or not Metropolitan, I'm thinking of OMDC, now DCR, the
Right.
Rangers. People remember the old days. They were actually called the MDC Police way back in the old day. But no, the DCR Rangers. They rushed past the DCR Rangers and was able to get into the basement floor. Unfortunately, I don't think they knew where to go because they kind of like I was. My limited eyewitness reports indicate they were kind of like down there, but didn't know where to go next, as they kind of trapped in and started making a lot of ruckus. And then building security and troopers came down very, very quickly and contained them in there. And if you saw the video, the pictures, probably seen online, you can see right off the bat the problem with the State House. It's a hallway with no ventilation or windows. I mean, these folks are actually helping explain the interior of the State House problem, which is actually more common than not. Regarding the spaces in the buildings. I mean, there's no vents. It's a hallway. You can see people, about not even four persons from each other, distance-wise across, and they're all lined up against the wall. And there's that. But I mean, the bigger concern again, it's the breach of the building. And I think that the Senate, the House, and the governor's offices really need to rethink about security. If people can get through Ashburton Park, the little tiny park in front of that door, just roll right through the park rangers.
Yeah, I'm sure, folks had the Capitol insurrection on the back of their minds when that happened.
But the State House is a unique State House in the country for several reasons. And I've talked about this before. It's a museum, it's a functional legislative body, it's a full set office building where all the constitutional officers, except for the Attorney General, is located inside the building. Frank Bellotti, when he was AG, was smart enough to get a space across the street at Ashburton, one Ashburton Place. When they were building the building, he got a space before they finished building the building. Frank Bellotti being smart to do that. But, all your entire State House power structure is under one roof. And other states, state houses are now only used for legislative sessions. They're not functional office buildings, and they're also not always functional museums. Because some state houses are so old, they're not museums. So what often happens is that you have a separate office space not at your state house for staff and legislators to use. And they're very modern. They're like modern buildings you're all used to. The State House is not a modern building. It's 200 years old and 100 plus years old on one side, 200 plus years old on the other side. And I say it was built before indoor plumbing, electricity, and any ventilation. It had 33 fireplaces at one point to heat the place. So it's one of those things. I think when you watch the video, you can see what I'm talking about. It's just a corridor with no anything around it.
Yeah, well, even here in Quincy, it's a similar situation with old City Hall and new City Hall.
Oh yeah, new City Hall is not as healthy as old City Hall.
Right.
In terms of like its ventilation system and things like that. And I'm aware there's been COVID cases in the State House, in City Hall, in a number of different businesses I've been talking to, and the immediate quarantine of employees. And it's a close-knit space, and businesses that are more warehouse-like, not surprising, had a high transmission issue.
Yeah.
They're not high ventilated areas, like back stock rooms, for example. Basically living in a closet. So, protesters aren't new to me. I mean, you had protesters in the building, outside the building, but they've always obeyed the rules of the building.
Yeah.
People have always been civil and obey the park rangers, obey the state police, and then we have rules of conduct of how you behave. And people, for most part of my life in the building, most people come in and protest and make a statement, have followed the rules of the building.
Right. Yeah.
Very rare I've seen that happen. But again, the bigger issue here is twofold. One, people actually was able to breach security. And second fold is people who just don't want to follow the rules, simple rules of the building. We're not talking about complicated stuff here. And it reflects poorly on these 9 individuals, who they are. I mean, you can talk about the political statement. No, let's talk about them not following basic rules.
Sure.
And, ignored people whose job is to secure and protect folks inside the State House.
Yeah, well, you don't, there's no metal detectors, there's no pat frisks. You don't know if they're armed. You don't know.
No, we do have metal detectors. Yes.
Oh, you do? Okay.
Yeah, post 9/11, we have metal detectors and an X-ray machine.
Okay.
And that's about it. So that was a real big post 9/11. So for people who were there before 9/11, because I was there before 9/11, we used to have no metal detectors. All the gates were open. All the doors were open.
Yeah.
So you could slip onto seeing the JFK statue, slide across from let's see here, there'll be the Beacon side going west side of the building. And then you can slide yourself out of there, come, out through the arches on Mount Vernon Street, pop yourself over to Ashburton Place and come back in that door.
Hmm.
You can do this kind of Z shape through the building, and it was perfectly fine. 9/11 changed our world, where they reduced the entry points to two public entrances. And even for employees, my pass doesn't let me access all the doors. I can only access one door in and one door in and one set of types of doors out in the arches. I can get out of the arches, but I can't get in under the arches, but I can only access the door at Hooker. I only can access the door at Hooker statue door. That's the only door I can access, only on the curbside. So even legislators and staff does not have full access to all the doors at State House.
Interesting. So let's talk a little bit about what the governor was saying while that was going on, lifting the mask mandate in the schools. What do you think?
Well, if you have family that have kids in school systems, depending what city you're in, it's going through some school systems like wildfire, Omicron. I was texting with a friend yesterday. I haven't talked to since Thanksgiving. We're doing text chat because today's where we text chat a lot. And again, another case with a kid brought it home. The whole class is infected. A total nightmare. Same thing with another friend I was chatting over during Christmas period, right before the Christmas break. A kid came home sick, Omicron right through the whole family again, which means the other children they have in school brought it to their school, and it just went nuts. So, my personal opinion is I do think that there's a little bit of underreporting, I think, at the school level about what they're really telling you exactly how bad the infection rate is.
Mm.
In my personal opinion, I think certain school districts are not quite up front because it depends on how you define a close contact, and it depends on how you define, infectiousness. So, the science is very simple. If two people are wearing a mask, your chance of transmitting diseases to each other reduces immensely. It's an 80% zone that you're not 80% plus not giving a disease to each other, two people masked. But you're also not in a contained room, and some of the very old schools don't have great ventilation again. I mean, there are some places, saying that you should open windows in the winter to try to keep air moving, which of course doesn't make any practical sense in New England.
Right.
It's a long day of kids with masks. I mean, everyone on this call knows what it's like now. So eventually, things happen, and even if kids are for whatever reason in short-term close contact with each other with masks on, there's that still very small chance, well, not very small, I mean small chance that they can still transmit to each other, and it's not surprising. So lifting the mask mandate in February, what they're doing is they're definitely looking at the curve rate regarding Omicron, and we all know the curve rate is improving. We're on the downside slope. Although MWA water tests are showing that the sewer system is showing a decline in the virus particles, and the hospitalization rate is going down, even though ICU beds are still floating in the 85-90% capacity area. They are going down slowly. And people still get very mild symptoms, especially if they've been vaccinated and boosted. People I've talked to that have much better recovery than people I've talked to that have had no vaccination, who have longer recovery periods. Mm-hmm. Symptom impact is different from talking people I know that are infected. And I've known people that have been infected more than once now.
Yeah.
So those of you think you get 100% immunity for catching it once, that's not true. I've talked to folks the second time because of vaccination and boosting and being infected before. Again, it was not as horrific the first time they got it. It was pre-vaccination. So, there's a big part of that. So I think one of the real questions that needs to be asked, and parents should really ask this question to their school system, is what is the infection rate inside the school system itself? Because you need that kind of data down to the school level to determine the safety of your children, whether or not you should continue to wear your mask.
Yeah. I know, I think system-wide here in Quincy, it's pretty low, but individual schools may be different.
That's correct. I mean, most parents I've talked to in the city, I still don't have kids, folks, so I rely on the kindness of other people's kids to tell me what's going on. It has been pretty good in the city overall. People are wearing their masks. People have been vaccinated. We're a very high vaccination rate city. We are at the statewide average.
Mhm.
And even when I go out, I say again, we go shopping, whatnot. 85, maybe 90% of people in a room have a mask on, and even then, people tend to not want to crowd you. It's been my experience. People have been very respectful of space. There's not that kind of shove you aside mentality that somebody may experience going shopping, just kind of like move you along. So I mean, I think Quincy folks, for the most part, have been very good. I think that's also reflected in our school systems.
Yeah.
I mean, I had another friend last night texting Brookline school system, close contact. They're waiting to get tested.
Oh, I mean, I think all the health professionals agree it's not over, certainly. It's better, but it's not over.
And again, people remind folks, kids are not as highly vaccinated right now as adults. The vaccination in children is still extremely low, comparatively speaking. That's also a contributing factor of why it's able to kind of move around. And then also the asymptomatic problem. Kids come in perfectly healthy. They can take their mask off, they have lunch, whatever. Other kid comes over, you may not notice it, been there 5, 7, 10 minutes, whatever, with the mask on, and the asymptomatic carrier gives it to the other one. And next thing you know, you got it at home. So, that's the real danger here, that, people get symptoms, but you could be potentially infectious 1 or 2 days prior to symptoms appearances, or even have no symptoms at all. I have one friend whose neighbor, 50% of the house, 100% COVID, half of them not well, the other half is fine, fully vaccinated, boosted. The people not well, mild symptoms, up and at them, fairly.
Yeah, it is such a bizarre virus, the way it impacts people. It's just so random.
It is very random. And other folks I've known that caring for other people at home, whether parental, children, or spousal. Yeah, one person is taking the other one, they're both vaccinated. The other one's not feeling well, but not devastating. The other one's perfectly fine.
Yep, there you go. That about sums up the entire pandemic, how it's been going for 2 years.
Exactly it. And it sounds like a marriage. One spouse is fine and one is miserable. Maybe just some reflection of irony in that statement of COVID. But like I said, the future is very difficult to predict. Alpha showed up in a warm weather, moving into a warm weather spring. Delta showed up in the hotter August and September. Omicron showed up in the winter, much more mild than Delta in terms of death rate but much more infectious. Omicron is now the only thing more infectious than Omicron now is measles. It's at chickenpox, which is generally extremely infectious.
Yeah.
So, it's moved into the 2 slot next to measles, and measles will kill you pretty fast if it's untreated. So, and the reason we don't have measles because of herd immunity. We've spent, decades to vaccinate people with measles, and the people who are unvaccinated won't get measles. People who are vaccinated, because the people who are vaccinated can't get measles to begin with.
Right. Yeah, that's the essential definition of herd immunity. It's just not enough infectious people for it to travel.
Yeah, and that's what's happening in our crowd now, is that between vaccination rates, as I said before, people have gotten it, not gotten sick, and then that ends that should end that route for that virus for that person.
Yeah.
And then just running out of people to infect. So people who are bunkered in much more heavily, so to speak, or more extremely cautious, reduces one more person of potential infection, which keeps the virus going. You throw in vaccination, even if you're not vaccinated, you're willing to wear a mask, you're very highly sanitized, you keep your distance, you reduce your odds of getting infected. Again, because of nature transmission, if you get it, you can give it to someone else much more quickly, especially if you're unvaccinated, especially if you're vaccinated. And, but I mean, even if you're not, if you're able to keep away, mask, sanitize, and just keep away from folks, you're again keeping yourself from being infected. The drawback, of course, is that, you've now masked, sanitizing, and keeping away from folks. That's the drawback in itself, keeping away from folks. And some people don't want to heed that level of caution that you know, the safest thing to do is not being near other people.
Yeah, I mean, it has an emotional impact, certainly, psychological impact too, for a prolonged period of time. So there needs to be a balance.
Well, you and I both know that. We've now 2 years together. So
Exactly.
we
I have
can-
seen you personally on occasion.
yeah, if people want to watch our past videos, you can see the psychological effect of COVID on two people right here. If you want to go back to April 2020 and watch all those videos, you can see how literally the week by week psychological impact it has on two
Yes.
folks.
Yeah, well, those first ones, actually, I was in my bedroom at home.
And this is the same background, except for rare exceptions in the car that everyone's been looking at,
That's right.
despite their jokes about my hair growth. But I mean, it's I think we are too definitely the week by week psychological sampling on video on what COVID has done to the psyche over the
Yeah, it
course.
would be an interesting experiment. We'll give that to a grad student to study because I'm not going to do it.
I'm not doing it. We're going to let someone else watch several hundred hours of video. But we're also two people involved in business, people business, right? I mean, we're both in people business. So both of us had to be in isolation for long periods of time during the first wave. I mean, in a job where we're basically helping people or talking to people, or helping talk to other people, making connections. And we
Right.
both do that in our jobs. And, COVID really inhibits our ability to work. And, that's also reflected in our mood as 2020 spring and summer got scarier.
Yeah, it's true. It is very true. Let's switch gears a little bit, Tacky. Any progress on the voting legislation, early voting, mail-in voting?
Yeah, governor's desk. We're waiting.
Oh, okay.
So the governor's desk, I'm sorry, I keep getting them mixed up because I keep thinking primary day versus early voting, two different issues.
Okay.
The governor's desk has the primary day as well as the $100 some odd million in COVID PPP spending for school
Yes.
systems and testing at community health centers. The early voting, mail-in voting, all that stuff is sitting in the conference committee at the moment.
Oh, it still is? Okay.
So hopefully conference committee will come to resolution soon. But more importantly, in the near term, we need that primary date set.
Right.
So I can get my nomination papers printed and get this process started for another 2-year renewal of the job. So hopefully the governor will sign that soon, and Secretary Gavin will have those papers printed. I think probably signing it maybe today or tomorrow. I've not looked at Sales News Service to confirm when he actually has signed it. Generally, they just look at Sales News to put out the report
Okay.
when he signs things into the law. So
Yeah,
I didn't see it.
folks are anxious to get it too.
Oh, absolutely, because the city and towns need to know when the primary day is. Candidates running for office need to, Democrat, Republicans both need to know when the primary date is. And the primary date is printed on the nomination papers.
Right. Supposedly they're due, they're available starting the 15th, right?
That's what we're hearing.
Okay.
Well, see, it's like I said, that kind of stuff is really dependent on the printer.
Yeah.
I mean, you can't make a printing company print faster than they can print.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And everything is moving slower these days, it seems.
Yeah, agreed. So obviously I'm very eager to get my papers. But I do fully understand that, certain things like printing stuff, it can only print so fast.
Yeah. Governor went to Washington, I think last week or earlier this week, to talk about transportation, got some money.
Yeah, well, he's going down to DC. I think be more trips for the governor to go to DC. It seems that the Biden administration, continues to be very interested in working with states regarding the infrastructure and COVID issues on a case-by-case level. As we all know, a lot of our infrastructure and our actually all of infrastructure projects are pretty much managed at our state level. I mean, even the interstate highway system, while it's federally funded, the state's the one that actually manages the capital improvements and all that.
Right.
So with the huge infrastructure bond bill that the feds approved for the next decade, I mean, the governor's down there to make a pitch to ensure that we get as much money as we can as possible for the different state, local, and federal roads and bridges that we need to get done. But, again, at our front in the legislature, we're trying to decide how much that we can, again, put into a trust fund like we did with the ARPA money.
Yep.
and give us ourselves some flexibility of what to do, especially with the governor announcing during the state of the state that he wants to file another bond bill for transportation.
Yes.
And I'm just like, what? Because we did a monstrous transportation bond bill last session
Yep.
for the governor. So I'm not exactly clear what's going on here. I got a lot of questions. So let's leave it at that. And
Okay.
then,
All right. He wants to cut taxes too.
yeah, and he also wants to file. He has a capital bond bill for capital management. We talked about that a few weeks back, and we are going to have an economic development bond bill again. Those are much smaller bond bills. Economic development bond bills tend to be in a 100 million zone, not a billion zone. Tends to be. So we have another small development bond bill coming. So I mean the governor's definitely putting on our plate a lot of debt load. Now, just because we authorize debt doesn't mean the governor spends it all.
Oh, okay.
I
Interesting.
always like to remind folks, we can authorize the governor to put out bonds, but the governor is not required to fully use the entire bond authorization.
Oh, okay. What happens to the money that's not spent?
Oh, it's never been spent. It's actually, you can't
Oh.
spend what you don't have. So you have to, it's authorization for bonds. So we put timeframes on these authorizations, 5, 10, maybe 15 years, depending on the circumstances. And if the governor does not use the authorization, then it expires and you have to make a new request of legislation for new authorizations.
I see. Okay. So would the new governor have to request new authorization?
No, it carries over to governor's terms, mobile governor's terms, because it's a date on the bond. So I say that, here's $5 billion bond authorization for let's say transportation. Let's call it $5 billion, and I decided to put a 10-year bond authorization on it, and we pass in 2022. That means that authorizations could be 2032 for $5 billion. You cannot take more than $5 billion over the course of 10 years.
Gotcha.
It doesn't matter who the governor is.
Okay.
But governors are not required to take the entire bond authorization, and just can just let the rest of it expire, and then they can submit a new bond bill to ask for new authorizations once the other one expires, or they need special bond authorizations for targeted purposes.
Right. Yeah.
Like the capital one's a targeted purpose. They're looking to do very specific capital projects throughout state buildings, parks, and so forth.
Right. Yeah.
So it's very, very targeted. I think it's a $5 billion one. I don't know how many years it's for, but it's got to be at least a 5-year one, minimum. So, I mean, and of course, the state actually has a self-imposed bond cap, and we do have a debt ceiling. So, governors have, since the era of Bill Weld, have been imposing a self-imposed bond cap, which right now sits a bit above a $2+ billion ish zone, like $2 billion ish area where we won't bond more than $2 billion a year.
All right. Okay. I'm sure there's a sense of urgency with the potential for interest rates to go up, to get them before that happens.
No, absolutely. I mean, they may reevaluate their internal bond cap around the Fed rate to try to get the best rates we can before they go up, and then we'll borrow less. We'll issue less bonds when the rate goes down. Goes up, and we'll get more when it goes down. We issue less when it goes up.
Yep.
And the state can't do that. We try to time our bonding, but again, investors on bonds, people who buy our bonds, wants the payment back, but we have to get those projects done. If the project's not done, people it becomes stupid. Why you did this to begin with? So I mean, the prioritization of a low-hanging fruit project with this administration moving to his last term is definitely going to be ramped up. They're most likely actively looking for any project shovel ready going into a potential rate hike, and get those bonds in for shovel ready projects.
Yep, absolutely. Put a lot of people to work too, which is a good thing.
Absolutely. I mean, the unemployment rate is still floating below 4%, which is amazing. 2 years ago, we were talking about unemployment rate of 14% and perhaps 20% unemployment.
I know.
2 years ago, and now we're talking about under 4% right now. And as we roll out capital improvement projects, whether it be from the Fed level or our level, it will keep jobs employed as well as the answer jobs associated with infrastructure projects, whether it be the coffee shop around the corner or the person that provides concrete. So there's that kind of ripple effect. And the film industry is picking up again. I'm not sure what's shooting, but there's going to be a lot of shooting going on in the film industry this summertime into the fall. So again, there's that ripple effect of local industry, and you may have seen on Channel 5 or one of the films, they local filmmakers again in Gloucester regarding the movie Coda got 3 Oscar nods.
Oh,
Again, Gloucester is another city in the state that's getting a lot of attention after what was it, The Perfect Storm? My brain's getting fuzzy again.
I think that was there too, wasn't it?
Yeah, that was the one that really, elevated Gloucester to a tourist site through that film, and now they have Coda. So, yeah. So, I've been told by people in the film industry that they're going to be continuing here for at least 3, or they had planned out 3 years worth of projects. So, you have that economic stimulus going on as well. The hard one again is still tourism. That's
Yeah.
going to be the hard, still the slowest recovery one. It looks like hospitality and tourism are still really in rough shape.
Yeah, as I understand, the National Park Service is going to open in Quincy this season.
Yeah, and we'll hope that people. Well, actually, if there's not a lot of outsiders coming in, maybe we should take advantage of it more ourselves. And
I'm sure
visit.
there are people that have lived here all their lives that haven't seen the Adams sites. Yeah.
Yeah, I visited them before, and I encourage everyone very much to visit all the Adams sites.
Mhm.
Maybe it'll be less crowded this year.
Yeah, absolutely true. No question. Yeah. I talked to the tourism director for the city, and she's very excited about staycations, and they're coming out with a new brochure soon to highlight some of the historic attractions. So they're definitely focused on the local market.
I agree. There's a lot of competition for regional stays. I mean, you've been watching your TV and the volume of commercials that have started now on other states trying to attract Massachusetts money to visit their state.
Yes, New Jersey is the one that comes to mind right away. Yeah.
Yeah, Maryland was very heavy last year. Florida, wouldn't be surprised to see Puerto Rico pop up a lot.
Oh, interesting. Okay. Yeah. And
yeah, U.S. territory, no U.S. passport,
Yep.
speak English, really is an English-speaking, Spanish-speaking area. And they have a very high vaccination rate. It's another area where among the top 5 vaccinated areas, Puerto Rico's up there.
Yeah. It's going to be the international travel that's going to be slow, I think.
Again, we talk about vaccine passports a little bit. It's not necessarily just an issue about going to restaurants in your own area. It's about who you're going to let into your country.
Yeah.
And, other countries are still requiring, at least 2 shots plus a PCR test. The U.S. is not requiring a proven vaccination for non-U.S. travelers coming into the U.S. The presumption is that you got out of the country, since other countries require vaccination before you enter.
You should be able to come back in. Yeah.
I think that's kind of the logic there. If anyone's wondering, why don't U.S. people need to prove vaccination coming to the U.S.? I'm like, if you got out of here somewhere to another country, pretty much almost every country is requiring vaccination.
Yeah, they did all the work for us.
Pretty much sums it up. So, the U.S., the same logic. I mean, if you're coming in from Europe, for example, you proving vaccination for entering the country is actually pretty important for us here, given how much work that everybody globally has been putting in to try to contain this infection. You don't want to bring in new cases of infection.
Right. Certainly don't want another variant for sure.
And don't forget, unfortunately, the incredible loss of life in New York City, in the first wave, that was a wave that came in from Europe. That was a Chinese variant. That was a variant that came out of Europe. We didn't rise to a level of a lettered, alpha, as we're now discovering the alpha, Greek alphabet, alpha, Omicron data, et cetera. It didn't rise to a level of defining as a new variant, but the genetic mutation constantly changes. So the original COVID virus from Wuhan was not genetically identical to the virus in England that came out of Europe. So our infections actually came in from the European side.
Okay, so interesting. It had already mutated once before it even got here.
Yeah, that's how they could identify it as a European variant.
Yeah,
even though it didn't qualify as a completely different virus because it wasn't different enough. But they knew what the genetic mutations look like. Not genetic, it's RNA. It doesn't have genes in the conventional. Right. So its RNA strand is different from the Wuhan strand. The different was found in Italy and England. So, Yeah, it's kind of important, folks, for us to know who's coming in here that's vaccinated or not.
Yeah, yeah.
If that isn't the lesson right there, I don't know what to tell folks. So
What do
if
you
you
think
want,
about the trucker protests in Canada, Jackie?
it's kind of crazy a little bit because the trucking industry indicates they're well into 90% vaccination rate,
Hmm.
right? So again, it's like the protest of the State House. It looks big on a lot, but it's really not a lot of people relative to the total size of the folks that are out there.
Yeah, yeah. It has, yeah, like you're saying, it has an optical impact because of
Yeah.
just the sheer size of the vehicles and the coverage and the location.
Agreed. It's an optics issue and get that aerial shot. I mean, it looks like a lot, but when you weigh it against the size of the entire industry, it isn't.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, given the fact how we visualize things, it's never put in context. So if I tell you that, you have, 10 people protesting against vaccination, but you in that same field, there's 100,000 people in it, of which the other rest of them are vaccinated, then that 10% is the outlier.
Right. Yeah. But that doesn't make for good headlines.
No, it doesn't. And obviously, as we've seen with any other protests throughout the last 2 years of protests, because we've been through a lot of protests on a global level, there's been people that just kind of mingle into the crowd and take advantage of the situation to tag along, even if they're not part of that crowd.
Yeah, just for the sheer spectacle of it.
Exactly. So you're not a trucker, you're just showing up because you just want to get into a protest, right? And thankfully, it doesn't appear to be anything problematic. Canada is a very civil society, as we know. And I suspect, it's going to attract more people to congregate in one spot, to give the appearance bigger. And this is again, this kind of interesting phenom where people think they have like a large group, but they're really drawn in from local states. Another good example is my data disaggregation bill, which I got a lot of protesters for, right? They filled a room with this Garden Auditorium with 300 some odd people. But then, my guys in the audience were talking to other folks and, people talk, right? And we discovered that, more than half that room were non-Massachusetts people. They came from Connecticut and others that were bussed in. Then we found out that another segment of the population aren't U.S. permanent residents. They're all on teaching or student visa, so we're going to go back home next year.
Yeah.
So again, this interesting optics of people raising high opposition to my bill, which one are non-residents, and some won't actually be here next year because they're on work visas. Able to go home anyway. They just came along because of reasons they came along. I mean, I can't explain the reasons.
Yeah. What was that for, Jackie?
That was regarding my we're having the state do proper identification of individuals by ethnicity.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
It's a so-called data disaggregation where we want to ensure that if the state collects data, we actually collect proper data regarding ethnicity. So in the case of Asian communities, Chinese, Japanese, Indians, Vietnamese, Cambodians, Laotians, and so forth, because we're not a monolith. The Indian community is very different from Korean community. We lump us as Asians as one. Certain groups, because of the size of ethnicity compared to the smaller size of the other ethnicity, drowns out their existence. So, for example, there's enormous underrepresentation of, for example, Nepalese. Even though there's, I think, in the area almost maybe close to 10,000 Nepalese in the area, but because the Chinese population is 300 some odd thousand, the data set only less Asian, then the Nepalese's concerns vanish.
I see. Okay.
Because the Chinese population overwhelms them in the Asian bloc. So, this is a big problem in policy making because underserved people are not going to exist and bad things happen. I mean, mental health is another class example. Asian Americans are under provided for mental health issues, but there's also no data sets about which categories of Asian folks have different needs. The same thing with education. I mean, there's a higher high school graduation dropout rate in certain Southeast Asian communities, such as Cambodians and Vietnamese, but the Chinese and Indians have a very high school graduation rate. But because there's more Indians and Chinese than there are Cambodians and Vietnamese in the scale of things, the higher graduation rate gives the appearance that the the Asian monolith has a high graduation rate, but if you drew it into the smaller data sets, there's at least 5 ethnicities that have a much lower graduation rate than Chinese and Indians. But no one wants to pay attention to it because the monolith makes it look so good. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Anytime. These people don't exist in the data set, so they don't matter anymore. The goal is to try to make sure they exist.
Okay. Where does that stand right now?
These Joint Committee on State Administration and Oversight has given that an extension order to April 15th. So the due date for bills was February 2nd. The committee has decided to need to do more work on it, and they've filed an extension order to April 15th to continue to work, which from my standpoint is actually a pretty good sign. I'd rather have a joint committee that will put out more time if they're serious about a project, rather than just dump something out, right? As a chair, I do that too. I do have extension orders and bills that I'm still actively working on. That I know I can get done. I just need a little extra time.
Yep, absolutely. Okay, very good. What else is going on?
We've been enjoying the Olympics. We were talking about that before we started. It was, as people may remember, in 2008, the Beijing Olympics had probably the best Summer Olympic opening ever, and I don't think it's ever going to be replicated. Obviously, because of COVID, it's much more muted. This year in Beijing, the Olympic opening was nice, but nothing like 1,000 drummers in one place. And the U.S. teams are doing pretty good so far, but it's still a long Olympics to go. And and for whatever reason, primetime NBC 10 seems to like my sports in the evening when I have a chance to watch. So obviously, I enjoy things like figure skating. And I do enjoy snowboarding, a sport I didn't think I would enjoy watching when it first came out. And it turns out it's a lot more fun than I realized. I don't watch too much skiing. I mean, I do like the alpine, what do you call it? The alpine jump. I can't remember the name of anything, but
the giant slalom.
The giant slalom, that can be fun. And the fact it's built next to a steel mill with those cool towers. So everyone's like, it's not a nuclear power plant. It's a steel mill that hasn't functioned since the Beijing Olympics. They just never tore it down.
Yeah.
So, I mean, and it's all artificial snow. So you can see the granulars. So everyone's flying down those things much more than they realized on the first run. So practice runs and first runs on the snow has just been people just trying to keep control as they're kind of zipping through the granulars.
Right.
It's all fake snow. It's man-made snow.
Yeah, it's you can get incredible speeds. There's no friction at all, basically. Yeah.
Yep, and got to watch Chloe Kim from LA and Nathan Chen from Utah win gold for snowboarding and ice skating. And Nathan Chen in particular, because that's such a rigorously difficult sport for any Olympian in every country to get. And and Nathan Chen was the guy that was like, he was going to win in Seoul, and he unfortunately crashed a bit at the end. And this redemption period. I mean, I know there's a drama NBC does with these Olympian stories to kind of build up the hype to watch it all. But I mean, the hype was well worth watching. If you get to watch it on replay, or suggested. I mean, he broke the world record for the short performance 2 days ago, and then he closed out last night on a near flawless performance. And it was you could see it. The talent level very clearly. And Chloe Kim was a repeat. So she defended her title. And, watching people try to get, 13 feet above the Pike wall. And then do 3 or 4 or 5, hard 5 is hard. It's really get 4 spins out of it. Because she did try to do the 5 spin twice and wiped out. At that point, really secured a gold. So, I mean, there's much more action going on. We talked about curling earlier.
Yes, I'm so proud of the Italian team.
Took out the Canadians and the Americans. They used to dominate that sport.
Then they all went out for pasta afterwards.
You got a carb load before and after curling.
That's right.
And, there's still speed skating and I was watching shooting for a little bit. I don't know what it's called. It's a cross country skate shoot. I
know what you mean. I can't think of the name either, but I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. The idea you got to get cross country ski, which is wicked difficult. I don't ski even, but I know cross country ski is difficult, even though I don't ski, because you're not going no hill. You're just pushing yourself, very hard.
Very physically demanding. Yes.
Yeah, stop, hit your targets, finish targets, then keep moving.
Right.
It's amazing how watching even people on cross country skiing can suddenly catch up, sneak up on people, and try to make the pass. And it's like, it's watching a lot of fun competition of people around the world. So I know we have a lot of entertainment choices these days. We've got streaming, we've got video, we've got your phone, we've got everything. But I mean, the Olympics is something once every 4 years, and it's also one of the more unusual Olympics. No one's in the crowd.
Right.
Very little cheering overall. You don't see the families in the stands of every country carrying their flags and the posters and things like that. It's just not the same.
Right. No, you're right. It's a different experience, but it is a nice distraction, from everything else that's going on.
No, absolutely. And again, athletes, play for the country, but also play for the sport. And I think those of us in the world needs to be a little more like Olympic athletes. It's more than just where you're from. It's what you have in common makes you special.
Yeah. Yeah. It's kind of like I always equate it to the space program because, we've had many cooperative space flights with countries you might not expect, like Russia and China. It's different, I think, when you're in outer space.
No, absolutely. Same thing with weather.
Yeah.
Weather was one of those places where crosses all political boundaries. Politics don't matter when it comes to weather. Weather data is crucial for not just telling us it's going to snow tomorrow, but also for global warming, climate change type stuff. And when there's a natural disaster like the eruption in Tonga, global weather data was essential.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Sure.
Not just for detecting tsunamis, but also the long-term impact on that type of volcanic explosion in the atmosphere and in the water. And that's what weather scientists, meteorologists do. That's part of their job at a science level global. So the Olympics, the space station projects and the weather. I mean, they politics doesn't matter.
Yeah, they don't know countries' borders.
No.
Yeah.
No. It's about commonality of man and working towards purpose. And like the Olympics is competition, but it's peers in your competitive sport and the best in the world.
On that note, Techie, we should let folks know how to get a hold of you.
Sure. 617-722-2014, 617-722-2014 is the phone number. Mash your button. Please leave us a phone number. The staff reminds me that you have to leave us a phone number. We can't call you back if we can't find you. You can email at tackey.chan, tackey.chan@nmahouse.gov. My email box is much more tame now since I got past Route 10, so the volume of testimonies have come much lower now, thankfully. I do sort through my email and my junk email because it does end up there too.
Yeah.
We'll get back to you as quick as we can if you got a question or an issue. State Representative Tacky Chan Facebook is up. We do post our public hearings, the committee there, executive sessions are posted there as well. The live, no, not live anymore, but live at the time, Facebook streaming, as well as some informational things that are interesting on the site. For example, like we had a few weeks back, the latest civil service exam postings a few weeks back, for example. So, when we get certain things of interest that, we'll post on there, whether it be public health or civil service exams or, how to find, an end grade if the power goes out during the storm, for example, things like that will informational postings. And of course, we have tackeychan.org. Again, another informational website. We just put information for the public to try to find things. It is under reconstruction in the sense that we need to update it.
Okay.
So you'll be seeing this page evolve over the next 2 months or so as we kind of work our way through the updates on it. And
Okay.
of course, QATV. I mean, if you want to find out what I was talking about last week with Joe, sometimes it's newsy and sometimes it's not.
It's true. We don't pre-plan these. We should let folks know. It's very free form.
Yeah, this is very ad lib, as you can all tell. Yeah, it is truly unscripted. So, and it's, as you can tell, because the way I kind of do a little more pausing, there's a bit of a stutter as I'm trying to recall stuff in the conversation very quickly. So there isn't like a script in front of me.
No, these are not 10-second news clips we're doing here. This is the real deal.
This is the real deal. So you can always tell because I will misspeak. I will catch myself. You can see when I'm trying to recall some information during the conversations and these, and sometimes I'm correcting myself in the middle of the interview because I didn't quite hear the question correctly. If this was recorded news media, we could do the question a second time.
That's right. Yeah,
No,
we could do that another time. That's for another show.
yeah, most non spontaneous news shows, I do interviews where I do multiple clips of a question. If I somehow bungle my way through the question,
Yeah.
which does happen. I mean, when you get an interview,
Oh, yeah.
you know it's going to be a 10-second clip, and I got to get the question. You know, they ask the question, and I can't hit the 10 seconds. We got to do this again.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So for those who don't watch news, always wondered, this guy who does interviews, you know, I'm fully aware. I do my 5-minute answer is truncated to 15 seconds or less.
Right.
So, you know, I will flub the questions every so often, realizing that this is taking too long to explain. And reporters will actually sometimes work with me. Most of them will work with me on reframing the question a bit, so we get to the answer that we're trying to find what the question really is about.
Yeah.
So as a result, there are multiple takes. This is not that situation.
No, we're totally unscripted here. That's right. Which is the way I like it.
Yeah. So if you like to see us, you see me more casual, conversational type of media, welcome. Come back here more often. If you want to see me on television scripted, not really truly scripted, but more like multiple opportunities, I think is what I put it, to try to meet the question reporter. That's a little bit different.
Yeah.
And like I was in City Line, for example, that was unscripted.
Yeah.
This past Sunday, talked about Lunar New Year. I was on NPR, WBUR, talked about Lunar New Year last Wednesday. So I've been on a couple of media outlets the past week. And those weren't really like Channel 5 night news scripted, right? Those are more conversational.
Sure.
So we could talk more about media interviews next week if you want and find out how that works.
That'd be fine. I'd be happy to, let folks in on our secrets.
Yeah, we can talk about that a little next week. I know we just come to the top of the hour, so. But yeah, if you're interested, email Joe. We can talk about how to do interviews and teach you how to do it.
Yeah, please do. Always happy to hear from folks. Definitely. Thanks, Jackie.
Thank you, Joe. Talk to you later.